So let's talk a little bit about branded video and just in general how brands are using social to get their word out. We just had a discussion with Rob Norman, and you've been involved with a lot of very interesting campaigns in the past. One of them was the Oreo campaign in the last Super Bowl. Super Bowl's coming up. Tell me, how do you make something like the Oreo event happen when there was a blackout and Oreo tweeted out you could still dunk in the dark, I think, right?
I think it all comes down to being ready and having the right people in the room. So with Oreo, I mean, that was gold that there was a blackout and that we were able to tweet that out. I think what that came down to was having the right people in the room, so thinking about having the creatives in the room, the media people in the room, the legal people from the client in the room ready to be able to give the sign-off to allow things to go out, and the brand people as well. So having the right people in the room and being ready is how that always works. Okay, and then if you take a step back and just think about digital video and doing a campaign online versus mobile versus over the top versus television, right? To what extent are these various platforms being unified in terms of the messaging and even the content that's being pushed out by brands? I'm glad you asked it in that way, actually, because I think one of the things that was something that was bothering me yesterday was the fact that people were talking about TV versus online video versus mobile. And I think that what has to happen is there needs to be a convergence there. We work a lot with Videology that are here today as well, to work with share shift. So thinking about, not about an online video pot or a mobile pot or a TV pot and that coming out of the digital video, there's a digital budget and you decide to have your online video budget from that. I think what you need to think about is the overall budget and start to share shift from the TV dollars into online video, so that you actually are thinking holistically about audio visual, no matter what the platform, rather than thinking about it in silos. I feel like that's quite old thinking to think about it in the silos that we were talking about. So where are we right now in terms of, if you look at a large brand, what portion of their budget typically is online? How much of that is mobile versus TV? How much has shifted so far? Because it seems like not a lot. I think we've seen a lot of shifts, certainly at Starcom Mediavest Group. We've seen a lot happen across a portfolio of brands, and it really depends on the brand and the audience thereafter. I hate to talk in percentages and think about, X% in mobile, X% in online video, because I like to think about it as a holistic approach and thinking about how we're going to reach these people with this content. Mm-hmm. So I don't really mind whether that's on an online video screen, whether that's a tablet or a connected TV or a regular TV, because the reality is, I watch on an iPad and I throw it up to my big TV screen in my living room a lot. You were saying yesterday you watch on your iPad in front of your big TV screen. So I don't mind how I reach the person, as long as I've got the right content reaching that person in the right environment. So I know there's a lot of research out there that says that people are prepared to consume long-form content on their mobiles. I think they are, if they're in an environment where they can't consume it somewhere else. But is the industry ready to have a unified buy, or do you still have to go to different ad networks to do the different platforms, right? It varies. There's some of the players out there are already doing multi-screen, mm-hmm. And I lean towards them, because I think that if you can make the media agency's job easier and more efficient, then you're going to get a better result. Obviously, you have to go to players like InMobi directly if you want to buy pure mobile, but equally you can go to other players and buy cross-screen. So I think it's really important when you think about that. Going back a step to the experience, I think that when you think about a big screen, you can have a lot more of an immersive experience. So you can start to do much more long-form content, and I include desktops and tablets in that. When you come to a mobile, I think that it depends on the environment in terms of how immersive that experience can be. So when we talk about branded content, branded video, what in your view have you seen that works? What's your approach to that? I think, just to throw back to something that Rob was saying before, I think that you have to think about the value and the utility that the content's going to give to your consumer. And you have to have a right to play in that conversation. You have to have a reason to be in that conversation. So if you're a brand that sells, I don't know, like Tide he was talking about before, you can't just go out and talk about racing if you're not part of that. And we found that insight through listening to the environment and seeing what was happening. That was one of our real-time examples that we used with our product Link D3, where we went out and responded in real time and had the TVC on air and in the online environment within about 4 days. And so I think it's really about being able to listen to what's going on and then understanding what are the topics and insights that are of interest to the consumers of your brand and how relevant they are to your brand, and then building out the content and utility from that. And furthermore, I think that you need to find the right partners to do that with. So it's moved away from the media agency, creative agency environment. I think that oftentimes you need to go and see other partners in the Hollywood environment, whether that's a Berman Braun or a media owner like an NBC or an AOL or whoever it might be. But you need to actually work with the people that are used to producing that longer form content. So we see a lot of that.
Right. So what's a good example of a campaign that crosses social, linear TV, other formats in a way that is authentic?
I think the Tide example that Rob talked about before, we did that, I think it was last year, or the year before. I think that's a great example because
Tell us about that, what was it?
So we have a team that work on Tide that actually have that kind of war room environment. They meet on a Monday morning every week, and you have all the different composite parts like I talked about in the Oreo example. And they sit together and they are an agile team. So on a weekly basis, they're meeting, they're looking at what's in the news, what are we hearing through the social environments, and then how we can then activate upon that. And never in a million years with the kind of target audience we have for something like a Tide would you think about car racing. But of course that instant happened where it was NASCARs and there was a crash and out they came with a Tide and poured it on the track, and suddenly there was this buzz. And so it gave us an opportunity to tap into that insight in a very different way and build out that creative and talk about a topic that was really, really relevant at that time period.
Right, so this is an example where people were talking about a brand outside the control of the brand, but then the brand
latched onto it, yeah.
Wanted to become part of the conversation and seemed natural because it was their brand, yeah. Right? And then how does a brand then do that in a way that doesn't appear like they're trying to hijack this conversation that's about something else that's in the news, but that is just, oh yeah, of course they're talking about it because it's their brand.
I think it's about listening to the conversation in the right way. It's not latching onto a quick fad. It's latching onto where you see that utility and value and where you see that consumers are genuinely interested and talking about the brand associated with that incident, rather than a little incident that you can try and latch onto. It has to be something that has that utility and the right to play in that conversation.
Right. Now we talked about previously also the different ways people interact with media, specifically video, on different platforms, and I just want to sort of press you a little bit on your view that you should think about it shouldn't matter. You should reach audience wherever they are. But yet, how do you then make sure that you're taking advantage of the platform that they happen to be on? So if they're on a tablet, you can take advantage of the touch interface, right, of the tablet. If they're on a 10-foot experience, you can be more visually, engaging. If they're, online, maybe it's more about social media. But can you talk a little bit about how you have to tweak the way that you talk to consumers based on the platform, or do you think that it's just uniform?
I think sometimes people are going out there uniform, but I don't necessarily think that's the right solution. I think that actually if you tweak it slightly, you can have a much deeper experience. I talked about immersive experiences in terms of the larger screen, but the depth that you can get by having further content. So if you think about in a situation where you're filming some content for a particular piece of a particular brand, then if you can get the behind the scenes footage, interviews with the stars, if you like, or the participants in that, and any of the additional content that you can get from that, you can actually then build off of that. So I think gone are the days where you go to a shoot and you're shooting a 30-second spot. You're actually shooting a lot more content than that, and you're thinking about how you can build that depth of experience. So if you think about something like, we did something with CoverGirl for the Hunger Games, and the insight for that was we partnered with the Hunger Games, but it was to get the look of the Hunger Games. It wasn't about, you know, we just want to be part of the Hunger Games because it's the latest fad.
Right.
It was about being able to build the look, drive people to different stores to get different looks. So we had partners across different retailers. We had 4 different retailing chains actually participating who normally compete with each other to stock that look. And they were stocking the different looks from the movie. And so we were driving people to converse, to find the different looks in different places, and also we're providing that kind of utility and that value in that content by giving lessons on how to create the look, all that depth of content across YouTube and different other platforms as well.
Right, it was this cultural moment, they were part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well that's terrific. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks.